All right, well, thanks you all for coming out to the third installment of Veg Out, presented by UK Health and Wellness. My name is Vanessa Oliver, and I'm one of the dietitians with UK Health and Wellness. And this Veg Out program, if you're new today, is designed to make you maybe a little bit more familiar with some of the crazy vegetables that you've been getting in your CSA basket. Who do I have who's new here today? It's the first one for a few of you, right? Okay, great. So I'm glad that you were able to come. We've got one more after this. They're always the second Thursday of the month. Of course, we won't reveal what the secret vegetable is until right before the class. Much like your basket, you don't really know what's coming. So we're trying to keep that spirit of surprise. And today, you may have learned that it's eggplant, right? So some of you may not have gotten eggplant in your basket yet, but you will. Some of you may have already gotten it, and you're a little unsure. Do I have any of folks in the latter group with me today? Yeah, I see some nods. Okay, how do we feel about eggplant? Who loves eggplant in the room? Oh, all right. Who hates eggplant in the room? Okay, no, that's good. All right, so maybe I can change some minds today. A lot of people, when they think of eggplant, they think of maybe fried eggplant, eggplant parmesan, but maybe don't really know what else to do with the eggplant. I'm thinking I probably have some folks like that today. So fun facts about eggplant. Do y'all know how it got its name? No? So eggplants originally looked like this, okay, but smaller, and they were shaped like eggs. So the reason why they're called eggplant is for that reason. And you can still find white eggplants around the area. I got this at the farmer's market. They usually don't come small and white, though. You will also see small green eggplants, small orange eggplants. They're beautiful. Those tend to be maybe a little bit more bitter than some of these varieties that are going to be known as Asian eggplants. And these are readily available at your farmer's market. You can see that I do have a variety of different colors to show you today. These are all available locally, okay? They're really pretty, you know? I mean, it's not just what you see at the grocery store, which is typically going to be this globe-style eggplant. I will say that the eggplants that are typically available at the grocery store might have been sitting around for quite a while. And that's where sometimes that bitter quality can come into play. If you get an eggplant that is fresh picked in your CSA basket or from the farmer's market, it's not going to have as much of a bitter quality than you might expect. So give them a chance, okay? They can actually be quite sweet. We were doing a little recipe test yesterday with the recipes I'm going to prepare for you today. And one of the women there was surprised. She was like, I really am getting kind of like a sweet candy quality from this eggplant. And she was pretty shocked. So as far as nutrition with eggplant, one medium eggplant, which is basically what this is, the whole eggplant runs at about 110 calories. And it's, for that reason, it can be a low-carb, low-cal vegetable. It's a non-starchy vegetable, which is the kind of vegetables that we all need to get more of, right? You fill half your plate with these non-starchy vegetables. They're a great source of fiber, and really not much else in the vitamin department, okay? This is going to be more of a vehicle for other things, okay? But this whole eggplant will give you about 16 grams of fiber, which is most of the fiber that we need for the day. So if you can find a way where you're going to eat a whole eggplant for your meal, you're going to be doing a good job, okay? It's a member of the potato family. It's also related to tomatoes. It's got a lot of different names worldwide, but in this country, we usually call it eggplant. Sometimes you'll see it referred to as aubergine, okay? And as I mentioned, there are a lot of different varieties. They can go from this dark purple to this mauve to this striated to white to green and to orange. But it's definitely one of the most common vegetables throughout the world. It's in a host of cultures, from England to India to the Middle East to Italy to America. You'll see it in lots of different dishes. Now, there is a long-standing controversy about eggplants. You probably didn't think that they were controversial. And you'll see me looking at the bottom of these eggplants. Now, The reason why is because if you start to hang out with maybe some little old Italian ladies like my grandma was, she might be looking at these in the store trying to figure out which one she's going to choose, okay? And it may be an old wives' tale, but there are male and female eggplants, okay? And this folk wisdom says that if the eggplant has a round dimple, like this one here, I don't know if y'all can see it, at the end, versus a kind of slash or oval dimple, that means that the round dimple, which might have more seeds and be less meaty, is the female eggplant. And the one with the slash is the male eggplant. So I don't know who came up with this philosophy, but apparently the female eggplants are more bitter. I don't know if that's necessarily true, okay? But I'm just going to throw that out there. You guys can sort of experiment and see what you think. But if you see someone checking out the eggplants, that's why, okay? I will say that with eggplants that are this fresh and that have just been picked, again, that bitterness is really not going to be a quality to worry about, okay? So just a little, information that you can impress people at your next cocktail party with. You do, when you are choosing your eggplants, want to choose smaller eggplant, all right? Even though it may seem like a great bargain to get the big, giant eggplant, that's really where that bitterness quality can come in, and the skin can get a little bit tough as well. So try to choose smaller eggplants. That means that they're younger. You want it to be firm, and you want it to be smooth-skinned with no soft spots. You also want it to feel heavy for its size, okay? That means it's not dried out and kind of like leathery a little bit. If the flesh bounces back just slightly when you press it, then it's ripe. If the indentation remains when you squeeze it, then it's a little overripe, and it's going to be a little bit mushy, all right? Now, you can mitigate that somewhat with some food preparation methods, which I'm going to mention in a minute, but generally, you want to stick to those sort of criteria that I just mentioned. You want to make sure it's not dry. So if you do this and it sounds like a melon, you don't want it, and put it back, okay? Now, I can tell you that the ones in your market baskets or your CSA baskets are not going to have these qualities. So this is mainly if you are getting your eggplant from the grocery store, which you might in the winter months. They are available year-round from somewhere, okay? But they're generally in season here in Kentucky around this time of year, July and August, and you'll see them into September as well. They are quite perishable, and they can get more bitter as they age. They should be stored in a cool, dry spot and used, if you can, within 3 days of purchase, okay? If you're going to use it right away later that day, then you can store it on the counter. And if you're not going to use it until like day 2, then you can go on and put it in the refrigerator where it will last just fine in a plastic bag, okay? But don't forget about it because it doesn't like super cold temperatures. So keep it in the front of your refrigerator if you can. You'll notice also that they are really sensitive to ethylene. So if you know that there are some vegetables that maybe give off a lot of ethylene, like apples, for example, you wouldn't want to store it next to that, okay? They also brown quickly after you cut them, so try not to cut them until right before you use them. And you wouldn't want to can eggplant for any sort of long-term storage. It doesn't really behave well with that. You can freeze it once you cook it, and that will be just fine. Okay, so once you get your eggplant home, give it a little wash to make sure that there's not any extraneous dirt on there. And then some people will eat it with skin, and some people will not. Do I have any people who feel strongly either way? Sandy, how do you feel?
I do not like the skin.
You do not like the skin.
My husband eats all of them.
Okay, yes, so you have a divided home. Yeah. Okay, yeah, see, I'm an eggplant skin fan. But yeah, so sometimes with supermarket eggplant, you'll see some of that bitterness quality does reside in the skin as well. Do you find that farmer's market eggplant also you don't like the skin, or are you just sort of...
It came from an early age.
Yes, and that's difficult to get rid of, right? I will say that if you do cook your eggplant with the skin on, you are going to get a little variety of texture, and some people like that, some people don't. But I will be preparing eggplant with the skin on today. Okay, Sandy's going to eat it anyway. Good deal. Another sort of thing that people worry about with eggplant is whether or not they should salt it before they cook it. So those of you who cook eggplant already, do you salt or no salt? I see some yeses and nos. Ooh, okay, yes. So as a yes for you, yes. All right. So this is, again, controversial. So controversial, this eggplant. People usually salt their eggplant for one of two reasons. One is to draw the bitterness out that may reside in the eggplant, and the other one is to improve the texture, particularly if you are frying the eggplant. I can tell you that there are people who test eggplant in labs and have found that neither of these things actually occur when you salt the eggplant. So it's really just preference. If you grew up salting eggplant, then you're going to salt the eggplant, and that's fine. You're not going to hurt it, okay? If you start out with a young eggplant like this, it's really not going to be bitter, so you're not affecting the bitterness whatsoever. I will say that salting the eggplant actually will draw some of the moisture out of the eggplant, and so people think that it will stay firmer when you fry it, but actually what it's going to do is enable the eggplant to absorb more of the oil, which is usually counter to what you want to happen. It will make the eggplant quite creamy, however. So if you're after a creamy texture when you're frying, then by all means salt the eggplant. And if you like to salt the eggplant, then salt the eggplant. It's fine. Today, I will not be salting the eggplant, all right? So what I'm presenting you with today is a master recipe for eggplant, and this is the one with the glass bowl on the cover of the card, all right? And all of the recipes today have been made from this master recipe. So if you get your eggplants home and you're really not sure what you want to do with them yet, go on and prepare this master recipe and then you can decide, okay? So when you do the master recipe, I like to take the leaves off the eggplant only because if you don't, I find that you avoid cutting to the very end of the eggplant and you're wasting a little bit when you do that, okay? Use a sharp knife or a serrated knife if that's easier for you to use, and go on and chop your eggplant into about somewhere between 3/4 and 1/4 inch thick discs, okay? Now remember, I'm not peeling this guy here, and I'm just cutting them down the way. And this is one of the most popular ways to bake or roast eggplant, all right? Some other ways that you can do it, of course, are cut it into chunks. You can also cut it into what are known as planks, which is when you just go down lengthwise, all right? And then another very typical way, if you have a gas stove, is to take the eggplant and just put it whole on top of the burner, okay? You can also achieve this with a grill, if you like. But if you do this, what you're going to do is impart a nice smoky flavor to the eggplant. You will have to turn it every so often with tongs. But this is most often used for a lot of Indian or Middle Eastern dishes if you're going to make a dip and you want a nice soft texture throughout the eggplant while still keeping it intact for easy handling. Once this is cooked, and you'll see it collapse, so you might make a little mess in your burner, and that's okay. You can always clean it, okay? But you'll take it off. You will let it sit. You might want to vent it a little bit so some steam escapes, because be careful. Eggplant's about 90% water, so there's going to be a lot of steam that's going to build up in there. And then once you have that, you can cut it lengthwise, scrape the pulp out to create a stuffed dish. You can scrape it all out and put it in a food processor to create a dip like we're going to do today. Or there's a host of other varieties. So there's a lot of ways that you can cut an eggplant. Today, we're just doing the slices. So once you lay these all out on your cookie sheet here, I'm going to do a couple different kinds. If they're all about the same size, then they're not really going to cook differently from variety to variety. I will say that this one is my favorite, the one that I'm cutting now. This is similar to, this is an Italian variety, and I find it's just very, very sweet and creamy naturally, but it's also one that I grew up eating. So, and then I'm putting it on a parchment paper lined cookie sheet. All right, you can also use aluminum foil. If you don't have either, you can spray it with pan spray, and that will achieve the same effect. You just don't want it to stick, because if anyone's tried to scrape eggplant off a cookie sheet, it's really frustrating. Okay, I've got some oil here, and I'm just going to drizzle it with oil. And this oil is already seasoned, but you can go on and then just season it with salt and pepper. and put it in the oven, which I'm going to do here.
What kind of oil is that?
That was olive oil. I prefer to use olive oil, but you can use whatever oil that you like to use, okay? Once you've got it in a 400-degree oven, all right, you want to bake it for until it's done is kind of what I say, but it's going to be maybe about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, okay? And I'm pretty sure that's what it says on your card. Yeah, 15 to 20 minutes. So check it. After 15 minutes, you want the undersides to be a little bit browned, and then for the last 5 minutes, you'll go on and flip them, and then that way they will be evenly colored on both sides, and they'll be delicious just like that, okay? So that is going to be the master recipe for y'all to work with. I magically have a tray already done here, and this is what they look like when they come out. So you can see they're pretty evenly brown, they've shrunken quite a bit, and they do have that nice slick of oil and salt, which is going to give it quite a lot of flavor, okay?
And stack them on top of each other?
You can stack them on top of each other to store them, but I will say that if you're after a little bit more of a crunchy texture on the eggplant, you would want it to be one level. If you don't mind a little bit of mush, depending on what you're doing, then you can stack them together, okay? And what you can do once you have these slices, you can do the first recipe that we're going to taste today, which is going to be the no bread bruschetta, okay? A lot of people are trying to eat less bread for whatever reason these days, and so what we're doing is replacing the bread in traditional bruschetta with eggplant slices. And we've got some ready to go for you here, so we're gonna go on and pass these. Now I've cut the eggplant into little quarters, so you're not going to get the full effect of a slice. But if you just want to take a little piece with your fork and see what you think. On the recipe card, you'll see that these do contain tomatoes and feta, capers, and a little bit of raw red onion, okay? And it's just dressed with a little bit of oil and red wine vinegar. And it's just sort of a nice kind of summery alternative to the regular bruschetta. And of course, you can put anything on your eggplant slice, okay? This is just one style of recipe. This is a nice way if you've got a lot of tomatoes in your basket, lots of different colors. This is a great way to use them up, okay? It's a nice way to use up fresh herbs as well. So this, I have fresh mint in there. I'm a huge fan of mint with eggplant. You can also, of course, use basil or parsley or anything else that you might be getting in your CSA basket. Okay, so while you all are passing around the bruschetta, I do want to mention something about a question I got yesterday, actually, which is the difference between roasting and baking. So does anyone know, like, what the difference is between roasting and baking? I really just learned this. If you're cooking food that already has a solid structure, all right, so like any type of meat or vegetables, or no matter what the temperature of the oven is, you're roasting it. All right, if it's in the oven and it's a solid structure, it's roasting. If you are cooking a food that doesn't already have a solid structure, but it will after it's cooked, so like a batter, so like muffins or cakes or cookies, then you're baking it. So that's the only difference between baking and roasting. I thought that was cool. I have kind of a skewed viewpoint maybe, but that is something, again, some more trivia for you. So is there, yes, Ila.
The eggplant you had roasted.
I'm sorry.
The slices of eggplant. Can you use that for eggplant parmesan so we don't have to fry them?
That's a good question. So Ila's question was, if you have slices like this already prepped, can you use this for eggplant parmesan instead of frying? And I see some nodding, and maybe some of you already have. And yes, you absolutely can. You do not have to bread and fry eggplant parmesan in order to, or eggplant in order to make eggplant parmesan. You can even, this is a dish that we've made at home before, sort of create a deconstructed eggplant parmesan where you have slices like this, put just a little sauce and a little cheese on top, and then rebake it again really quickly. So you almost have like little individual portions of eggplant parmesan. And that's why I chose this recipe as the master recipe. There are lots of different things you can do with eggplant like this, not just what's on the card. So certainly eggplant parm would be a wonderful addition. Yes. Any other questions? All right, how are you feeling about the bruschetta? Good? Yeah, Jackie?
What was the white eggplant that you said was your favorite one? Is there a certain name for it?
Oh, the eggplant that I like. There is. I can't think of it right now. Yeah, I'll think of it after I'm done.
Rosa Bianca.
Thank you. Rosa Bianca. That's what it's called. See, I say it so much at home that my husband knows what it's called.
Do you get that at like Whole Foods or Good Foods or?
At the farmer's market, actually. Yeah, it's grown by a few farms in the area. That particular one is from Mark Henkel. And those of you who were shopping at the Wednesday Farmers Market this season have seen Mark Henkel there. He was the tomato guy. He's also at the Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday market as well. He's got a big white truck, which probably doesn't differentiate him from
If you're roasting the eggplant on the grill or on the whatever, when you cut it, is it going to be easy to cut or will it fall apart?
Okay, so if I have it like this, do you mean, and then I take it off, it is going to be quite soft. Yeah, but it's not hard to cut. It's not going to really, it's not difficult to cut. No, you would want to make sure that it's cool so you don't hurt yourself. And again, make like a couple of vents before you cut it, just like this, and that will let quite a lot of the steam come out, so you're not surprised by steam when you cut into it. But no, it's not difficult to do that once you.
Still drizzle it with oil? Would you still
I would not drizzle it with oil before I put it on the flame, because that will create a grease fire. Yeah, yeah. So once it comes out, then you can certainly flavor it with olive oil. Absolutely. And you can use that preparation for other vegetables too. That's a great way to do homemade roasted red peppers.
Yeah, and is there a difference flavor-wise? I mean, do you prefer, because I've seen some Latin American friends of mine that prefer to roast things on the stovetop.
Yeah. I find that it's a great, if you're inside in a stovetop, you're not going to get a huge difference in flavor. You might get a higher amount of char, which is, when it turns black on the outside. So that will give it maybe a slightly different flavor than if you had done it in the oven, just because the temperature is not as direct in the oven and you won't get that sort of blackness that gives it some flavor. It's like a deep caramelization. If you do it on the grill and it's a charcoal grill, then you will get that smoky flavor that charcoal imparts. If it's a gas grill outside, then it's going to be similar to what you would do on the stovetop. So it depends on how long you let it go, really. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Okay. So we've got another dish going. I'm going to do the eggplant dip, okay, which you see. Now, this is going to be similar to a baba ganoush, but it's not quite baba ganoush, so I'm not calling it baba ganoush, okay? And this is if you take your slices and you go on and cut them into pieces like this, all right? And you can put them in your food processor, which I've already gotten loaded with a bunch of eggplant, some lemon juice, some garlic, some smoked paprika. What else do I have in there? A little salt, a little olive oil, okay? And I'm going to let that puree. You're looking for a smooth consistency when this is done, okay? When it's just about there, I'm going to add in some Greek yogurt. So this is actually going to add to the protein level of the eggplant. It's going to give it a nice creamy consistency. And this is actually what is differentiating this dip from a baba ganoush. Baba ganoush is a Middle Eastern dip that you will often see at restaurants in this area. It does not usually have yogurt in it. Any questions while I'm doing this? All right, and this is just a plain Greek yogurt. And you'll see it get incorporated into the eggplant. It'll become a uniform color. I'm just going to taste it to make sure it doesn't need salt. That tastes pretty good to me. And we're going to pass this out as well. Now this is going to be good with crackers, with raw vegetables, with pita, however you'd like to serve it. We're going to have it with baby carrots and a crackers assortment today. And I'll fill up all of these and then we can refill the bowls as we need to. So again, this is a nice way to get a little bit of protein. It's a refreshing sort of appetizer dish. You could include it as a trio of dips. It would be nice with some hummus or with some roasted pepper dip as well. Has anyone had baba ganoush before? Okay, so you're going to know kind of what to expect as far as flavor and texture are concerned. All right. Any questions? Jackie.
The items that are listed as optional, do you ever mix any of those two, or you just would add one?
For the eggplant dip?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. I totally did not put them in there. Thanks, Jackie. So if I've got some herbs as well, and these are just mixed parsley and mint. Here, I'll put a little bit on that one too. Here, let me get in there. My fault. So you can use that as a garnish. You can also garnish with a little bit of smoked paprika. And that smoked paprika is meant to sort of mimic what you would achieve if you were cooking that eggplant on the grill, which traditionally in a baba ganoush, it would be cooked over an open fire, so you would get that nice smoky flavor, okay? You can also just drizzle it with a little bit of olive oil. It gives it a nice sheen and maybe adds just a little bit of extra flavor as well, okay? Switch it out. All right. And yeah, don't be shy about grabbing the crackers, you guys. We've got plenty. So. Okay. All right. So yes.
I really enjoyed, I'm not a big fan of eggplant, but I always enjoyed the Atomic Cafe's eggplant caviar.
All right. I'm going to have to come a little closer.
Sorry. The Atomic Cafe's eggplant caviar was something that I always enjoyed, which Atomic Cafe isn't around anymore.
Right.
Did you ever have that?
You know, I never did have it there.
Okay.
There are recipes online that you can find for eggplant caviar, certainly. It really does depend on what their particular recipe is. Yeah. But, you know, be creative, look online.
Is that just like have you ever made eggplant caviar?
At home, I have.
Okay, and is that kind of similar to?
Yeah, you can certainly achieve that texture by using the master recipe like I did today. Or if you want to cut it up first and go on and do that, then you can. But yeah. But you might find it at another restaurant in the area. You never know. So yeah, certainly. Yeah. So I see some good nods. Okay, with the dip. Excellent. Yeah. Did you all get some? Yeah. Okay, good. All right. So we're going to do a final recipe today, which is the Mediterranean eggplant salad. And I'm just going to go on and cut these eggplant up into quarters. And this is, again, a very forgiving recipe. You can pretty much put anything in there. I have chosen to use chickpeas, again, for some extra protein and fiber, as well as fresh mozzarella, because fresh mozzarella is delicious. And this has a parsley, olive oil, and lemon dressing. There's no garlic in this one. And you'll see that a lot of these recipes are particularly good for sort of summer flavors, summer preparations. The recipes that use more of a baked preparation, maybe with a red sauce and a cheese, kind of a more traditional Italian one, I kind of prefer those when it's a little bit cooler outside. So that's why I've chosen a lot of these recipes today. Okay, give this a toss. So this is the recipe card that has the little bowl with the salad and the lemon slices on it. And I prepared most of this, except for adding the eggplant, before you all came to class, and that allowed a lot of the flavors to marry. So this kind of salad will taste better if you let it sit at room temperature for at least 15 minutes, again, just to let all of those flavors come together. If you do make it ahead of time, then I would recommend taking it out of the refrigerator about that amount of time before you serve it. And that will, again, just help it taste the best. All right, so what do you all think about the dip now that most of you have gotten it? Yeah, not too bad.
Doesn't it cook everything they want to hear that?
What was there a question? Oh.
We're just commenting on Jody's verbal or noises.
So just a quick question. You mentioned when you slice the eggplant that if you leave it out for a while, it could brown.
Yes.
So after you've roasted it, after you've prepared it, would it still discolor if it was out for a little bit?
No. That is a good question. Yes. So for whatever reason, once you've cooked it, it will not have that same sort of, the oxygen that it's been exposed to will not affect it in the same way. It's been sort of seared off by the heat, if that makes sense. So you'll notice that if you've been here for the last other two classes, there was always a raw preparation that I also shared with you. I did not do that today because I do not recommend that you eat eggplant raw. It will not taste very good. I will say that if you were here at the last class with the beets, some of you may have been surprised that I prepared a dessert with beets. There are dessert recipes out there with eggplant. I chose not to do that today because I don't want to be a one trick, you know. But there are eggplant cakes out there, which I found very interesting. You can sort of, if you think of zucchini bread or zucchini cake, right, that seems weird at first maybe. So you can grate eggplant and use it in a sweet preparation such as that. You can also dice it, peel it, dice it, and cook it down into a puree, sweeten it, and use it as you would like an applesauce in a cake. So if you are really just frustrated with your eggplant, you don't like anything you tried today, you're tired of eggplant parmesan, you can always turn your eggplant into dessert, okay? So any other sort of final questions for me today? Yes, Stephen.
So if you were serving this and putting it on a table, approximately how long would it last? Is it something that you need to keep ice under, or out for half an hour or so? Is it okay?
Half an hour would certainly be fine. Any sort of prepared food, you wouldn't want to really let it sit out for, usually once it's over 2 hours, that it enters into that sort of danger zone as far as time and temperature are concerned. Now, since these were all vegetarian dishes, you may run a little bit of smaller danger, okay? But for that reason, just follow good hygiene practices when you're in the kitchen. Wash your hands often. Wash your eggplant before you cut it. Wash your herbs and that kind of thing. But these types of foods really do taste better at room temperature. Again, it just sort of lets the flavors come out. If food is served too cold, a lot of times you just won't get that sort of depth of flavor. So, but yeah, that's a good question. A couple hours, though, would certainly be fine. And then go on and refrigerate them in like a Tupperware, that's some sort of container with a lid. Yeah.
How long will it stay tasting good? Like after you prepared it in the fridge?
Yeah, usually prepared foods, I wouldn't go any longer than 4 days. And that's sort of the typical, the USDA definition. Everyone kind of has their own definition of, what tastes good, I would imagine. But do know that things that have fresh garlic or fresh onion in them, as a couple of these recipes do today, that flavor will intensify over time in the refrigerator. So you may notice that something all of a sudden tastes very garlicky or very oniony after just a day in the refrigerator. So keep that in mind too if you're preparing ahead of time, and maybe just add the fresh garlic or fresh onion as you serve it. Any other questions? All right. Well, good. Yeah. So have I changed anyone's mind about eggplant today? Maybe? Yeah? All right.